Good evening, everyone. We'll call the council to at 6 o'clock at City Hall in Marshfield, of course. Oh boy, September 27th, call to roll. All present, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public that have indicated the desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Seeing none, we will go to item D, approval of minutes, September 13th, 2022 regular meeting and September 20th, 2022 special meeting. Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Peschel. Any comments, questions? If not, please vote. All ayes, thank you. Item E, presentation of Historic Stewardship Awards to Tom Butke and Eric Nelson, presented by Vicki Schnitzler, Historic Preservation Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Strike, and council members for your time this evening. I am Vicki Schnitzler, Chairperson of the City of Marshfield Historic Preservation Commission. The City of Marshfield Historic Preservation Committee became a commission July of 2021 and have been actively involved in special training for historic preservation commissions through the Wisconsin Historical Society. Other members of our commission are here tonight, and I would like to introduce them. Ken Bargender, please stand, please. Chris Coleman, Aaron Howard, Chris Keogh, in the back, William Penker, and Brian Varsho, who is our council representative. And then also important to our commission is staff person Stephen Wiley. The Marshfield Stewardship Award program began in 2007. The purposes of the program are to educate the public on the community's historic resources and to promote an awareness and support for historic preservation within the community. A goal of the program is to encourage rehabilitation and maintenance of historic structures and to influence community norms regarding the proper care and maintenance of historic resources. The award is presented to those who have rehabilitated, restored, maintained, or improved buildings at least 50 years old in order to maintain the character of the building and/or the neighborhood. The award may also be presented to any individual or business that is involved in historic education and promotion within the community. This year, we have 2 awards that we will be presenting. The first Stewardship Award recognizes the historic education and promotion of Marshfield's forgotten and unseen history. The City of Marshfield Historic Preservation Commission recognizes the efforts of Tom Butke and his committee of his 2 sisters, Rennie Rimmer and Kathy Tauschek, also Alan and Connie Jeanette, and dozens of other volunteers that Tom recruited for their work in memorializing Marshfield's veterans who reside forever in our local cemeteries and beyond. Tom and his committee erected a permanent display at the north end of the community center on East 2nd Street. Painstaking efforts were made to include over 2,200 names of veterans. Each veteran has a story, and each one of these veterans is a part of the patriotic history of Marshfield. When Tom was interviewed by Hub City Times, he said, "I'm not a veteran, but these people really need to be recognized like everybody else." He went on to say, "I have a great committee, and they have done such a tremendous job, and without their hard work, this would have never have happened." As you look at the panel of names, you will notice that there are several blank panels at the end. The project is ongoing as efforts to add missing names continues. The City of Marshfield's Historic Preservation Commission would like to thank Mr. Tom Butke and his committee for their many hours of service in the research and construction of this truly wonderful display, recognizing the many local heroes that often don't get the recognition and respect deserved. Mayor T-Strike, would you please come and join me, please? And at this time, I'd also like to call up Tom Butke to accept the award for your committee.
Vicki mentioned that the buildings have to be over 50 years old, and I think I qualify for meeting 50 years. So thanks to our committee. It's like Vicki said, it's an ongoing thing. A lot of veterans passing on, and we continue to do research and find ones that are not being recognized. So thank you very much.
I'd also like to invite you that if you have not been to see the display, you need to go to the 2nd Street Community Center and take a look. It's kind of mesmerizing, and it kind of makes you stop and think about all the people from this community that have put their life on the line. So please, take a few minutes and go over there when you get a chance. The second Stewardship Award recognizes the promotion of Marshfield's history in the Marshfield Middle School Art Department through the work of Eric Nelson and the past, present, and future art displays. Eric Nelson has been teaching art in the Marshfield School District since 1990. As part of his curriculum, Eric incorporated Marshfield's history of its people and buildings by having his middle school students draw their interpretations of Marshfield for the past, present, and future art exhibits. The exhibits started in the basement at the Thomas House in May of 2006 during the National Historic Preservation Month. With the exhibit being so large, it quickly expanded to the Marshfield Public Library, and within a few years was solely in the library. Eric has researched Marshfield's history by receiving historic information and photos from the library, the Northwood County Historical Society, and the Marshfield Historic Preservation Association, which in turn he shared with his students to aid in preparation for the exhibit of the students' art pieces. In 2012, the art exhibit pieces started to be judged, and monetary awards were given to the students. And in 2013, the City of Marshfield's Historic Preservation Committee, now known as Marshfield's Historic Preservation Commission, took over supporting the monetary awards for the 10 categories and gave award certificates to the 10 winners each year. At the awards presentation this year, Eric announced his retirement and that this would be the last middle school art exhibit that he would be involved with. The City of Marshfield's Historic Preservation Commission would like to thank Mr. Eric Nelson for his many years of dedication and teaching art to the Marshfield Middle School students and incorporating Marshfield's past, present, and future into what he did. Again, Mayor Teestrike, would you please join me? And at this time, I'd also like to call up Eric Nelson. Eric, congratulations. Thank you. Eric has a few pieces of art out in the lobby, if you haven't seen those when you came in, and he's going to be talking about a piece here for just a few minutes, so please bear with us.
Well, this is kind of the origination of the simulation for the students for Marshfield's past, present, and future. That's a drawing by me. And my grandfather was a grocer in a community in Minnesota of just 400 people. And so what happened is a Fairway Foods was going to open up a competing interest not far from there. And at the time I drew this in 2002, and when the simulation began in my classroom of Marshfield's past, present, and future, that was the time that Walmart was just coming into town. And I had this feeling of nostalgia for my grandfather and what that entailed. Of course, in time that forced him out of business and there was some difficulty. And so then I did a drawing that was displayed at the New Visions Art Gallery in the clinic. And this is my interpretation. And you see there's physicians with the cones on their noses and some kind of silliness because that's my nature. But it's very serious what the Common Council has provided here for the students. In your years of support and generous time that's been given by Mr. Steve Barg, he came in and he did a wonderful presentation on the importance of city planning and what city planning requires. And that was eye-opening for myself as an adult, and I know it had impact on my students. The professional quality of you, the members of the Common Council, and the professionals that you employ are staggering for a community of our size. So from the bottom of my heart, I deeply appreciate the support that you provided for my students with a monetary award as well as ribbons and other things. Now, I had always had about 10 awards we came up with brainstorming, and they came around from the idea of Louis Rivers Award, which was given by the Marshfield Genealogy Society. And they always kind of selected something that was family-orientated because we are a family-orientated community. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. The Marshfield Heritage Museum and the curator, Shirley Mook, who was an instigator in getting me active in thinking about something larger for the whole community, she always selected something that dealt with the history of our city, as she still does. The art centers got involved, the directors of Bridget O'Brien, as well as Adam Smirka from the Chestnut Center, New Visions Art Gallery, Ann Weinsbrot, Betsy Tannenbaum, Bobby Irwin, Catherine Petke have all been active selecting a representative of student work. Our Northwood County Historical Society's past presidents Brad Allen, Tom and Laura Pitak, Dolly Thomas, Martha Pomainville, all came and represented that institution. Main Street Marshfield, Denise Sonneman, Kaylee Gomez came in and spoke to the students as well. The Marshfield Public Award, Lori Belanja and Jill Porter, who's here tonight, and their boards have supported us throughout the years. And finally, the City of Marshfield Historic Preservation Committee, Ken Bargander, Chris Coleman, and Don Snitzler were all instrumental for that. So as all the students' work was displayed together as a unit, there was a sense of pride from the students themselves and shared excitement as the civic board leader selections were explained at, we had receptions for this people. About 300 people would attend. The student representatives who were selected by the civic leaders were always so impressed that their work was selected. Many of the students had never won an award before, and they loved having their ideas recognized by adults other than their teacher. You, this governing board, I thank you. You helped to establish a sense of worth and value by recognizing these students through the years. So thank you very much. Will go on a place of honor in my studio. And I thank the citizens of Marshfield for giving me the best materials to work with, which have been the children of Marshfield. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask Bill Penker to come forward. He has some comments about one of our past recipients.
For those of you that weren't here 2 years ago, I'd like to give a brief summary of the Stewardship Award that was presented at that time. And 2 years ago, the Stewardship Award was presented to St. John the Baptist Church, one of Marshfield's historic assets and long associated with the educational and religious history in Marshfield. And the award recognized a three-part project that first repaired and rehabilitated a water-damaged area in the church basement directly under the altar. And the Bosun Company, who did receive a Contractors Association award for their work, was able to save the original beams and the original stonework, so that was preserved. And in part of that space, there was a classroom and gathering area that was constructed. And in addition, a chapel was also constructed. And that chapel, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is a continuation of Marshfield's religious history. Now, the entry area, the chapel, and the gathering space are now the home to significant artifacts from Marshfield's medical and education history. The altar rail from the convent used by the School Sisters of Notre Dame, long a part of education in Marshfield, is located in the chapel. And the windows from the former hospital chapel are located against the north wall in both rooms. And both the chapel and the entry area have statuary from the former hospital. And accepting the award at that time, because of the uniqueness of what had been saved from the hospital, were Sister Rita and Sister Barbara, both who had a long association with St. Joseph's. Now, those who are familiar with Marshfield's history will recognize the role played by St. Joseph's Hospital, and those who are familiar with the history of that hospital will recognize the roles played by Mother Frances Streidel and the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother. This chapter in Marshfield's history is now complete, and it is closing. Sister Barbara Holweck, who served on the hospital's board of directors for many years, and Sister Rita Edelkoffer, who was instrumental in the hospice program as well as instruction at the old nursing school, are the last of the resident sisters associated with the work started by Mother Frances Streidel. Sister Barbara and Sister Rita will be leaving Marshfield to live in a retirement community operated by their order in Oshkosh. I found out this morning they will be leaving at approximately 7:30 tomorrow morning, right after the 7 a.m. Mass. We hope they and their order and the work that was done for the community do not become forgotten footnotes in the history of medicine in Marshfield. It's a history with which they both have a long attachment. Thank you very much, and I hope you all wish the two sisters well and a safe trip to Oshkosh.
Again, thank you for your time and your patience. Thank you.
Moving on to item F, staff updates. We're going to add a number 1, introduction of Brian Spooner and Hunter Hintz by Police Chief Jody Gurink.
Hello, it's my privilege to introduce to all of you our two newest officers who recently added on to our team. We have Brian Spooner and Hunter Hintz. Both graduated from local recruit schools. Brian graduated from Mid-State Technical College and Hunter from NTC up in Wausau. They're launching into their FTO program now and doing well. I'm very proud that they chose our city to start their career in and hope that they'll stay with us for a very long time. We're excited to see how they progress. So this is Brian and Hunter.
Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you, Chief Gurick. Our second is report on traffic congestion and parking concern on East 8th Street / Hemlock Avenue, presented by Tom Turchi, City Engineer.
All right, from our last meeting, we had several residents come in and ask to take a quick look at this corridor. A Street between Palmetto Avenue and Felker Avenue is posted no parking, stopping, or standing on the south side of the street through that corridor. I took a quick look at traffic crash history on that corridor. At 8th and Palmetto, we had, this is a 5-year review, we had 2 crashes with a failure to yield. One was property damage and one's a minor injury. And at the intersection of Felker and A Street, we also had 2 crashes, both just property damage. And there was one mid-block accident where a vehicle hit a tree, and that happened here in the last 2 months. But that was caused by intent of driving. So if you take a look at the crash history, there's not really any type of warrants for any type of crash analysis. But in that request, I did take a drive around the campus several times during school hours and especially during release. And I do think we can make some improvements with some additional signing and additional no parking areas to try to make things safer for the kids. So I'm anticipating bringing something to the Board of Public Works here in about the next month or so to make some recommendations for some improvement.
Great. Any questions for Tom? Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. I'm completely deferring to you because you know all the traffic stuff, but would there be any improvement if that was somehow a one-way circle so that parents came down one way, dropped off, kept going?
To try to enforce that year-round, I think might be kind of difficult. You may get some resistance from some of the residents.
Anybody else? Otherwise, thank you, Tom, and we'll look for that next report. And we have a third item on the staff update. Steve Barg, 2023 budget update.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 weeks ago, Jennifer Selensky, our finance director, and I gave you an update, kind of laid out the playing field, what we're facing in terms of the 2023 budget process and some of the challenges that we have to deal with. And we're continuing to deal with it. We're continuing to have conversations, trying to ramp that up. But it's become apparent that the idea that we're going to have the first budget meeting on Tuesday, October 11th is probably not going to occur. And because there's just too much to try and overcome in terms of this gap, and we're working through it as hard as we can. So my suggestion is that we have the first meeting on Monday, October 17th, which was supposed to be the second meeting, but that would be at 6:30, following the Board of Public Works and Finance meetings that night. And then the rest would follow as normal. The second meeting would be on October 25th. The third meeting would be on October 31st. If we do need to have a fourth one, which we have rarely needed, but if we do, it would have to be for a date set in early November. But this will allow time for, I think, better development and preparation of the document that you receive in advance of the meeting on the 17th. So I ask your blessing on that. That would mean that the regular meeting on October 11th would then be at 6 o'clock, the normal time, as opposed to the 7 o'clock start that we were initially proposing when we were going to have a budget meeting at 5. So it'll be 6 o'clock on the 11th, and then that full calendar on the 17th, including a 6:30 budget meeting.
Any questions from the council? Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 things. One is, when is the budget have to be put out for public notice?
Well, the main issue is getting the tax bills done. And, when you're going to have the budget before the council for consideration of adopting it, you need to have a public hearing that night, and you need to have it 15 days after it's been published in the official newspaper. So, we typically have the public hearing and adoption of the budget right around Thanksgiving, a day before, a day after, that kind of thing. And that gives you, a good couple weeks to get the tax bills prepared and sent out.
So we will have time then?
Yeah, I think even if we have to have a fourth meeting, it will be tight, but we'll have time to be able to do that and get the approval at the end of November and then get the tax bills out 2 weeks later.
All right. And one other thing, just to prove a point, since we don't, currently aren't allowed to get our phones out, can you email that so we can put it in our calendars? Thank you.
Yes, I'd be glad to.
Any other council members with questions? Seeing none, thank you, Steve Barg. Item G, mayor's comments. Item H, council comments. Item I, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Item J, consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Fisher. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote. All in favor, thank you. Since we have no items to remove from the consent agenda, the next item is letter L, election of Utilities Commissioner for the appointment of the 5-year term to the Marshfield Utilities Commission presented by me. But first, Steve is going to read the...
Right, and actually talked moments before the meeting with the city attorney, and he's going to handle the announcement, kind of putting this into place.
So it's my understanding one of the candidates may not be a resident of the city, and that had been brought to my attention. There is a code provision under 2-88 of the code that requires that an appointment be for a resident of the city, with the exception of a couple of different positions. Those don't appear to apply. One of them is the library board. One is for the economic development board for the person representing Marshfield Utilities. None of those apply. So in order to appoint a non-resident to a position, the council has to find by a 2/3 vote that either there are no residents, persons that are candidates that would meet the residency requirement, or in the alternative that the individual that is not a resident of the city possesses knowledge, a skill or training that would be particularly beneficial to that particular appointment. And you'd again have to do that by 2/3 vote. So in order to select an individual that's not a resident of the city of Marshfield, you'd have to make a special vote to find that by 2/3 vote that one of those exceptions would apply.
Okay, we have 4 candidates: Nate Mueller, Dorothy Schnitzler, Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler, and Jennifer Trader. Would you please make your nomination, anybody, for these 4 candidates? Alderman Wagner?
I would nominate all 4 so that the council may consider them.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Witzel. Thank you. Ashley, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, second, please. Alderman Tompkins, thank you. And any discussion? Did we see Alderman Fisher?
Thank you. So Attorney Wolfgram made his statement. Can you spell out who the non-resident is?
Right, it's my understanding that Mary Jo Wheeler is not a resident of the city. And again, I'm basing that on representations that have been made to me.
That is correct.
So,
Okay, I just wanted everyone to hear because I wasn't sure you actually said the name, so thank you.
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you for that clarification, because in her letter it actually says Mary Jo lives in Marshfield with her husband, so I assumed she was a resident. I guess I'm confused by that. Right in this letter that's in our packet.
Does she?
It says Mary Jo lives in Marshfield with her husband, so I just want clarification that that isn't the individual we're talking about.
Alderman Spiros?
She lives right outside of the city limits. So I'm sure she considers it Marshfield when she talks, but it's just outside.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you. Are we satisfied all the other candidates are residents then?
Yes, the other 3 are definitely all residents of the city of Marshfield.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Fisher?
So my question is, how did this not get caught, and when did it get caught?
I'm sorry, what do you mean it get caught?
Well, we had 4 people apply. One was not a resident.
Right, but if you read what I had, the press release, it said it could be a candidate from the city or somebody outside as long as they have the qualifications, and they have to bring them to us, which Mary Jo did in her summation.
Okay.
Yes, and then we have Alderman Spiros.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question. So then we just nominated all 4 of them. Is that the council agreeing by 2/3 that she has the experience or knowledge base to run for this position? I'm assuming since we nominated all 4 that that's what that means. What did that mean to nominate all 4?
I'm not going to speak for the council. I think here's how that will
Well, I'm
play out.
confused.
I think that the nominations are there for you to select this person for if you were ultimately to appoint, I think you'd need to make that finding specifically. So right now they're nominated. You'd have to go ahead and vote. I think your vote should reflect this in terms of, what I'm talking about is this consideration for the residency requirement. If we get to the point where you're going to make a final selection of that individual, then the council would have to make a specific finding. So if you go through the vote process and make that specific finding, then you can approve. But it is going to require you to specifically make a finding in regard to that. One option at this point, because the person's been nominated, you could, I suppose, elect to address that now before moving on to the other candidate or vote. But I don't think that's necessary. I think right now you can make that decision based on an election and getting to finalize that decision in the event that that person's going to be appointed, so that the council has got a consensus on that with the required 2/3 vote.
Just in follow-up, that doesn't make sense to me. I respectfully disagree with you. I think we should clear the air whether she's able to be whether she's able to be elected or not. Just seems to muddy the water to do it the opposite way to me. Am I wrong?
So I think that's your choice. You could certainly make a motion to try to make that decision at this time, but I don't know that you have gotten to. So let's say, for example, that you move forward with this vote. If somebody feels, or the body as a whole felt that she possesses enough qualifications to move forward, you could make that vote and make her your final candidate. You'd have to make a specific finding when that is done, that she has met the exception to the code. That's how it would work. So at this point, I can't say whether or not the body, when you made the nominations, looked at all of the candidates and made the decision that they're all qualified. And when it comes down to a final vote, there may be 2/3 vote that would find her that in fact she possesses the special knowledge that would prevail over all other candidates. Unless you were to vote on that in advance of making your decision, I don't know how you get there. You kind of got to get to the point where she might be your candidate and then make that finding one way or the other.
I don't see that. I don't see it. I'm sorry. Alderman Paschal?
Yes, I was pressing my button to amend the motion to nominate all 4 candidates, to remove Mary Jo Wheeler, as I feel that the other candidates are qualified and she therefore does not meet the standard of needing to be elected because no one else is qualified.
The only question, the point of order, have they already nominated them? So
Yes, they all 4 have been nominated. So he just amended the nomination for Mary Jo.
Okay,
So
so
we've
if you
not
haven't
voted
voted, then that
Correct.
amendment would be appropriate. You could make a vote on that amendment now at this time.
Right.
Someone else.
Can we call to make a vote on the amendment, please? Alderman, okay.
Right now, you are voting on an amendment to remove Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler from the candidates nominated. Bring it to the 3 nominated candidates.
Mrs. Spiros?
Can I ask the attorney to reread the rules for being on a committee?
Let me read it from my cell phone.
It's okay.
So that I'm quoting it directly. Again, I paraphrase that, but here is what the statutes or our ordinance says. all board and committee members must be city residents except for the following. The library board may have a member from a participating municipality. The business improvement district members may be downtown property owners or managers, and the economic development board member representing Marshfield Utilities can be a non-resident. An exception to the residency requirement may be allowed if, when the council confirms the appointment, it finds by a 2/3 vote that qualified candidates who reside within the city's corporate limits were not available. And obviously you couldn't make that finding. Or that by a 2/3 vote, that a candidate residing outside the city of Marshfield possesses certain knowledge, education, or background desired for the appointment in question.
And that's where I wanted to kind of chime in. It ties to both Councilmember Fisher and Councilmember Spiro's questions. I mean, I was the one working with our communications director who asked that we put it in for this, that said that, it should be residents. However, a non-resident may be considered. However, I think preference, I forget how I worded it. Preference will be given to residents, but a non-resident could be considered. And going back to what Councilmember Peschel said a minute ago, it's an or, not an and. So you could consider this individual you're talking about tonight, even though there appears to be qualified candidates from within the city, if you would find by a 2/3 vote that that individual has skills, abilities, background, education that would lend themselves to being that person. So, I mean, if you choose not to, that's fine, but you would be, because it's an or, not an and, it would be allowed.
So, sorry, the amendment is what? Sorry, you're just.
There's an amendment to remove Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler from the original candidates that were nominated.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close the nominations. Okay. It passes 7-3.
So now you'll vote on the original the amended motion. So now you would have 3 candidates for the nomination.
Yes.
So please vote with the ticket in front of you. Pardon me?
First, you need to vote to accept the nominations before you can actually vote on the paper. So you're
And that's
right
what we
now
just
voting
did
on
that.
the board to accept the candidates for nomination.
I know.
Sorry.
No, I'm not going to get into this. Refuse.
I can do it any way they want. Okay. We'll still do that. See.
You can tell them to vote. Ask them to vote.
Please vote.
On your paper.
I already asked that, but that's okay.
Sorry.
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did.
3,
That's
4,
okay.
5. Okay.
You're all kind of staring.
I can pick it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can do it.
Okay, thank you, Hap. We'll do one. Okay. We're down to 3.
Never mind you.
Wait a minute.
Congratulations, Nate Mueller. You are the next Commission for the Utilities by 8-2 vote. And thank you, council. That was a ride. Okay. First reading on ordinance number 1479. Mr. Fisher, I'm sorry.
Get on my thing. Just one thing. Congratulations, first and foremost, Nate. Well deserved. But I really do think the way this was handled as far as the process should be embarrassing to the city of Marshfield. So I believe in the future, we need to look at this policy and make sure something like this doesn't happen twice. Because when someone puts their name in the hat and then you remove them at a meeting, a public meeting like this, I just think it's embarrassing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Fisher. Okay, item M. First reading of ordinance number 1479, removal of lead and galvanized water services, presented by Nicholas Cum, Marshfield Utilities Manager.
Thank you. This is okay. So tonight, this is the first reading of ordinance 1479 for a private side lead and galvanized water service replacement. This is something that I've been preempting many times when I've come before this body, so hopefully it's not new, but this is the ordinance that would require the replacement of all the remaining private lead and galvanized water services within the city of Marshfield by December 31st of 2025. A private water service is the piece of water service from the curb stop near the property line into the property or building or home that's owned by the property owner. The Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin has required that the city of Marshfield or Marshfield Utilities replace all the lead and galvanized water services, both public and private, within the next 15 years, for a total of 168 per year. We began our replacement program last year, and we started last year. We completed 230 services that were replaced, and this year we're on track to replace about 300. That obviously puts us on track overall to be completed with the project in less than 15 years. There are currently 134 private side lead and galvanized water services left in our system. Of those 134, 27 of them are serving commercial properties, and 107 of them are serving residential properties. The ordinance that I prepared that's in your packet is a similar ordinance that we've seen in other communities. It's been passed in other communities in Wisconsin, including Green Bay, Kaukauna, Menasha, Mosinee, and Sun Prairie. There are two minor typos that I just want to highlight in the ordinance that was put in the packet that was brought to my attention after I had put it in there. In section 4E, there's a reference at the end of the section to a subsection 4. It's actually listed as 5, but it should actually be number 4. And then secondly, in section 5, there's a reference to a homeowner, and that should be property owner. So we'll get those cleared up for the next reading. There are 3 items that might be of particular interest in this draft ordinance. First, in the intent and purpose section, it indicates that all lead and galvanized water services lines in the city will be replaced within 10 years. This is something that the commission at the utility supports, and this deadline is quicker than one that's required by the DNR. In section 4E, it requires all private lead and galvanized water service replacement to be completed by December 31st of 2025. This roughly 3-year window for private side replacement was selected to increase the likelihood that there might be grant dollars, and I'm going to speak to that here in a minute as well, available from the DNR. Also, allowing the 3 years would provide the property owners time to hopefully plan, budget, and prepare for the replacement. In addition, this will help spread the demand across with the local contractors that need to be put in place to take care of the replacements. And then finally, in section 8, it allows for penalties to be imposed to those who fail to comply with the ordinance. This ordinance was presented to the Marshfield Utility Commission back on September 12th. And at that meeting, the commissioners unanimously voted to support the draft ordinance, recognizing that obviously this body has the ultimate authority on the ordinance. I think we can all say that removal of lead in drinking waters we see it on a national level, but obviously a local priority. And this ordinance would be another tool that will help us move forward with removal here in the city. As we look forward to the second reading, unfortunately, I might have to delay that for a period of time. We learned last week after I put this in the packet that the DNR is changing their funding source program. In the past, they used dollars and we would get them, and we've been doing that for the last couple of years, and that would roll right to the homeowner. Unfortunately, with the Infrastructure and Investment Job Act that came through from the federal level, those dollars are now at the state level, and the state's taking a different look at it. And they're going to look at changing how the priority, the process, and ultimately the availability of these funds get spread out. And unfortunately, that may have an impact on our customer base having the ability to actually receive those funds. So, and if that's the case, we want to reassess the ordinance and make sure that it's set up so that we can take advantage of those funds if they're available. We're currently actively trying to engage with the DNR to learn more about how these changes might impact. So that's kind of the framework of the ordinance, and I guess I'd welcome any initial questions here on this first reading. Speechless.
Seeing no questions? Okay.
Sorry.
Alderman Spiros?
Nick, can you tell me how do property or homeowners know whether their section needs to be replaced? Is there a simple way for them to check into that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So through the last couple of years, we've been sending out regular communications to these property owners to let them know that they have a lead service, that there is a program available, and encouraging them to go forward with it. Before the pandemic, we actually did door-to-door, try to get on knock on every door that had a private lead service to let them know that they had it and this program was available to them. And if for some reason there's been turnover or maybe they forgot and they want to check again, they can go to our website. And we have a spot about us. There's a lead service area, and there's an interactive map there that you can click on your property and it'll tell you what your situation is.
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. How accurate is that information on your website?
It gets updated. Typically within the construction season, we won't get updated. So this year, all the work that's being done this year, we'll update at the end of the year. So, but if you're a property owner that hasn't had anything changed, you should be able to go out there and see the information.
Okay. Because when I asked, you didn't have any clue what my service was, and you actually had to dig up my front yard to be able to get down and figure it out. So is that the case for some of these?
Well, all the ones that we've identified a number of years ago, back in 2012, 2013, we went through and went into everyone's home to replace the water meter. At that time, we also did a cross-connection inspection to make sure there was no any sources that could backfeed our water system. And at that time, we also made note of the material type of the lead of the pipe coming into the home, and used that as means to identify what type of service is coming in.
Okay, what year was that?
I believe we started in 2012 was when that project started.
Okay, because in 2019, you still didn't know because the connection was inside of my wall and you couldn't physically see the connection.
Okay.
So a lot of things about this concern me. You said at the state level, and I believe in your memo here, it says in 2020, the DNR said that we had 15 years, which means we have till 2035, but we're going to speed it up by 10 years. That concerns me. I don't understand why we have to speed up. You commented about the funding of the grant money, which I think we've made known numerous times, at least from this platform, and I'm sure from the utility perspective as well. If people aren't taking advantage of it, it's because they don't want to. So I don't really think that speeding this up that much is going to be beneficial. I'm also concerned with a penalty of up to $500 per day for people who don't have it replaced. So a week goes by, that's a whole lot of money. And that really is also very concerning to me. You comment here about, and I guess I'm not certain here, how many public side connections are not up to code?
I did not incorporate the public piece into the memo. We started with 2,400. After this year, with what we've replaced, we should be around 1,900.
So when are those expected to be completed?
Right now, we're actively doing 200 to 300 a year. However, we are working on a program right now where we're working with Elders, our financial advisor, to do a program, trying to understand if we could do it in 3 years and how that would look financially.
But at this point, there is no plan to have that done in 3 years, but yet we're expecting the residents to be done in 3 years.
We're looking at a program to do 3 years on the utility side. On the private side, as I mentioned in the write-up, this is what I put out there, and it's obviously subject to, that's why I'm looking for your feedback. If you'd like to see it changed, that's obviously a piece of the puzzle that we can modify.
Again, I have concern where we're dictating what people have to do with their properties, and I understand there's a safety concern, but I also understand there's some people in the public who just don't care. And so I guess I sort of feel like it's Big Brother pushing down on the
property owner saying you must, or you're facing a $500 a day penalty, and that the whole thing just kind of doesn't sit right with me. Thank you.
I respectfully understand your comments. I think one item to note is that the DNR is requiring this. But at the end of the day,
By 2035.
correct. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No action taken at this time. Second reading action at October 11th. Oh, you just buzzed in. I'm sorry. After I said something, Alderman Tompkins.
Sorry, thank you.
That's all right.
So as far as speeding it up, just to clarify, I'm just wondering what would be, or is the main concern that the funding source for the private citizens will go away? And so if we speed it up, they might potentially still have that funding source. But if we continue on to 35, they might have to completely do this out of pocket. Is that what okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Okay, one more time, please. Anybody else? I'm not going to look at the screen again. Thank you, Nick. We'll see you October 11th. Request to authorize execution of an agreement for an option year for shared ride taxi service for calendar year 2023, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be confusing to some of you, although if you've been around for a while, you know that this is the routine. We do an RFP, request for proposals for shared ride taxi services every 5 years. But then within that time frame, when we sign up, so to speak, with somebody for 5 years, we still have to every single year execute the next year's options. So in other words, even within a 5-year time frame, we're doing annuals. And that's required by the Department of Transportation. So what you're being asked to do tonight is to consider an agreement for another option year with Running Incorporated. They've been our provider for shared ride taxi service for since 2013. This is going to be 2023, the 5th and final year of that agreement. So in the fall of 2023, you will see this service being bid out again. We'll be seeking proposals from qualified providers of taxi services. But the request tonight is to authorize approval of an agreement for a 5th and final year under the current RFP with Running Incorporated.
Motion by Alderman Fire, second by Alderman Handler. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All in favor, thank you. Review of the cell phone use policy requested by Councilmember Witzel, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Witzel brought this up under items for future agendas. And so I put it in your packet. It's a one-page addition to our technology policy, and it specifically addresses cell phones and the use of them during meetings. I'm just going to kind of read a couple parts of it so you understand the premise of why we put this in place 4 years ago. We understand technology has really helped us do our jobs. It's helped all of us in many ways. But the idea being that the use of technology during council meetings could be distracting and disrupting to conducting meetings. It could cause actual or perceived violations of the state's open meeting law by communicating with people who may not be in the room. And then it also gives the perception of not listening to citizens and staff and others who are speaking to you at the meeting. So for that reason, it was determined that we ought to have the following requirements. Cell phones must be turned off prior to the meeting. Electronic devices may only be used for the purposes of reading materials provided for that meeting or other materials available from the city of Marshfield on the website, et cetera, for agenda topics. Electronic devices may not be used to engage in email, texting, social media, or that kind of messaging. And finally, electronic devices may not be used to engage in any business unrelated to the city of Marshfield. Now, the context under which Mr. Witzel brought this up was the use of his cell phone to check his calendar as we talk about when the next meeting of a particular body might be scheduled. I would suggest that that probably is not, truly in violation of this, although it may technically appear so, because effectively he's doing the same thing that others of us might be doing if we're looking at our day planner. I think the real concern is, do we think this policy is still appropriate? Does it still make sense for the reasons outlined? But again, if you are using a device and you're looking up your agenda materials, or you're looking up something germane to the discussion, that's different. Our intent, again, is to prevent people from using it in those really disruptive, distracting, or inappropriate ways during meetings.
So what is your pleasure? Anybody have any comments? Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. The only comment I would like to make, as it's already been mentioned here, is that the first bullet point in the second section there where it says cell phones must be turned off prior to the start of the meeting. I would like to see that change. Cell phones must be put in a silent mode. I do believe there are more and more of us that are utilizing calendars on our devices because they're quick and easy and mobile and easy to have with us. And in a situation like today, when we were discussing the canceling of one meeting, changing the schedule or a time of a council meeting, and then other various things like that, it would be nice to be able to pull up my calendar, look very quickly how that affects me, or if we have to make a decision on dates, to be able to look at that, since I'm trying to track about 3 different calendars at this time. And I guess if I need to, I would make a motion to make that change.
Alderman Paschal?
Thank you. I was going to suggest the same thing, and in keeping with making the policy complete, I would change the third bullet point to say electronic devices may not be used to engage in telephone calls, email, texting, social media, or instant messaging of any. Just so the question doesn't come up down the road that somebody's making a phone call during the meeting.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got a question and then a comment. The question is, I think I heard you, Steve, say something about open meetings law. Did you say that?
The fact that it could create either an actual or perceived violation of the open meeting law.
Can you clarify what that is?
Well, I mean, a perceived, either way, it could be that you're communicating with someone not in the meeting in a way that seems to circumvent the purpose of an open meeting. And the city attorney may want to elaborate on that. That's one of the concerns we had when we put this in place. Does it look like you're talking to someone from wherever trying to get advice or trying to get something that might be inappropriate since they're not even here talking to us at the podium or otherwise?
I mean, that's what gave rise to actually this policy at the time, was that there were occurrences where there were some social media exchanges, and following open records requesting this information, where it appeared as though members on the governing body, were receiving, let's put it that way, messages either on social media and or, it could have been text accounts, but the idea is once you're doing that, now you're having an engagement that's part of that meeting process. It's not open to the public. They can't see it. So somebody has told you something in making your decision that we don't have a record of, and that was the problem.
Okay. So to follow up, that makes sense. We have computers in front of us, and we could easily get on to social media here. I'm assuming the policy does not specifically stop us, because it sounds like it's a cell phone policy, not a technology policy.
No, actually not true. I mean, if you listen to the 4 bullet points that I read, and maybe it didn't come out well, the first one is specific to cell phones being turned off prior to the start of the meeting. And I think that Councilmember Witzel makes a really good point. It seemed like this came up when we first adopted it, that there's a concern that maybe they ought to be silenced, because what if you have an emergency call from home or something, and here you are, you don't know what's going on. At least you could see someone's trying to reach out to you. But the other 3 all say electronic devices may only be used for the following purposes. And the one that you're talking about specifically says electronic devices may be used, not used to engage in email, texting, social media, or messaging. So that would apply to your tablet the same way it would apply to your cell phone.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. Just to clarify for my colleague next door to me here, one of my very first League of Municipality meetings I went to, and during the legal discussion, there was discussion about how the city of Madison had issues with their council members texting each other during a meeting, which is a huge problem because they're having a discussion that's not open. So I think that those parts of this are fine. I think that they're appropriate. It's just again, the ability to have that resource to be able to look at and address dates or things like that as another potential resource during meetings, I think is valuable. And again, do I need to make a motion to make those changes? And
The policy is in place. If somebody doesn't make a motion and then it's voted on, the policy isn't changed.
Okay, so I would move to change bullet 1 to say cell phones must be silenced prior to the start of meetings, and I would also piggyback off what Mr. Paschal said and add in phone calls in bullet point 3.
Alderman Whistle makes the motion. Alderman Wagner seconds. Alderman Tompkins?
I just have a clarifying question. Are we saying that if cell phones are silenced, we can use them to look at calendars. Are we just implying that, or should it say cell phones can be used to access calendar? I'm just wondering, because the silenced, does that mean we can still use it?
I think it's,
Simplified.
I'll let the city attorney respond because I'm not really, I get your point and it's a good point. We don't want to get into technical violations.
So, I mean, my understanding of the policy, it's not in front of me, but the policy basically said that the cell phones needed to be silenced and then that the electronic devices couldn't be used to access certain things. So if that's the case, the cell phones aren't silenced anymore, that means they're on and you can access them for anything other than the thing prohibited here. So it should allow you to access your calendar. That's my analysis of that. Okay, everybody's nodding and I think that's correct. And a quick shot.
Okay, any other comments? And now we all understand what we're voting on. Is that correct? Or Jess, would you please, if you can?
In a synopsis, we are editing bullet point 1 regarding silent mode and bullet point 3 adding telephone calls. That's sort of incomplete, but not in front of me.
In agreement, please vote. Motion passes by all 10. Thank you all. Any other comments, Steve?
I guess my question is whether or not this needs to come back in final form or whether this is deemed approved with us making administratively the changes.
I'm not sure what you mean by administrative.
Well, I mean, you know, oftentimes we discuss things and we say we'll bring it back in final form to the next meeting. Given the two changes were relatively minor and it was approved unanimously, do we need to do that or can we just change the policy per directive tonight?
This was action by the governing body. This is decided right here, right now.
Sounds good.
Thank you all. Item P, adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.85 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Development agreement for sale of city-owned property. Do I have a motion to go into closed session? I don't see it, but that's okay.
Witzel.
Okay, I didn't see that, but
It's
that's fine.
Witzel and Patient.
You have a motion by Mr. Witzel and a second by Mr. Paschal.
Witzel and Patient.
Okay, Whistle and Paschal, and everyone vote, please. All 10 ayes, so yes, we're in closed session. Thank you all. in open session.
I like that.
And we are going to make the approval of the development sale agreement with H&S Manufacturing.
And
Yes.
before you make that motion, I'm going to recommend that you, if you move to approve that you make it subject to my review. The development agreement came up kind of quick, and I just want to make sure that I get through a final look at it.
Motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Handler. Any discussion? Alderman Wagner?
Yeah, that amendment does include that it's subject to approval by the
Yes.
city attorney?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we'll take the motion to formally mean this. The body moves to approve the development agreement with H&S, subject to the city attorney's approval of the form for the same.
Please vote. All 10, thank you so much. Suggestions for further agendas? Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. I guess I would suggest, as had been brought up earlier, that we look at dealing with this utility commission and some of the other bodies that were mentioned in there. I think it would have cleaned it up a lot had we vetted that process before we move forward with it. And it made things really messy the way we went with it. The second part of it I would suggest is we should probably take a look at each of those entities. I can understand including Marshfield residents for a lot of them, but due to the service area of Marshfield Utilities, we have a pretty significant surrounding area that are serviced by that same entity. And I don't know if that's the case with any of the other ones. That's why I was surprised it came up tonight, but I understand that's the way it's written, but I think those two items should be taken a look at and decide if that's the proper way it should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. I believe I'd already asked to have a report on our investment in the Vandahay Waters and how that particular entity handled, how everything went this season as a first full season. I would also, kind of on top of that, also like to get a report for a more recent event that took place in that area, specifically the Maple Fall Fest. It was the 30th annual. I'd like to know how things went in general with that particular event, and then I would also like more specifically to know how the changes that have happened recently in that area have benefited those that are attending that particular event, both from the removal of the tennis courts and making that into a parking lot, as well as the very large additional parking area by Vandahay Waters that I believe would have been available for participants, but did not seem to be so. So I'd like to get some information on how all that was done and, see if we can maybe make things improved, because there was a whole lot of noise on social media regarding the frustration in parking. Thank you.
Alderman Wagner?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to address O'Reilly's remarks. The Utility Commission has been especially
Wait a minute,
troublesome in terms of.
Okay, excuse me. This is for future? Because I was stopped a couple times because I made comments, so we need to stop. Ed, I'm sorry. Yes, I was cut off 3 times already because you're not allowed, because this is for future, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but thank you for understanding. And next up will be Alderman Spiros.
I'm just going to piggyback off of Tom Witzel's request and see if we can get an update on how the fair did this year.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
That's all.
That's great. Thank you. All great future, yes.
Yeah, can I just make
And Steve wants to jump in.
just a couple of quick comments. I have talked to Justin Casperson, and he will be presenting in October, probably the first meeting in October, I think, the report that you're looking for with respect to Vandahay Waters. The financials weren't all together yet at that point. And we have Matt McLean coming in October anyway to give kind of a semi-annual update on Visit Marshfield. So this will play really well with that.
And the fair.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Okay.
Shorter meeting.
Seeing no other future agendas, how about a motion to adjourn? Nobody motion to adjourn. I see no motion to adjourn.
We're already voting.
Alderman Spiros, Alderman Wetzel, Alderman Fisher.
I don't know, it's on autopilot.
Okay. I guess we're adjourned.
I voted.